So Forrest is an enrolled member of the Ute Indian tribe. He was born and raised on the Uinta and Ute Indian Reservation in northeastern Utah. He has a Bachelor of Arts degree in the Behavioral Sciences from Westminster College. Forrest has held many challenging jobs during his 38-year career, having worked for several Indian tribes in various capacities to serving as director for the Utah Division of Indian Affairs. He published A History of Utah's American Indians from Utah State University Press in 2000. He's played a key role in the PBS-sponsored curriculum project entitled We Shall Remain, which features a video series of the histories of the Utah tribes with accompanying materials. Currently retired, he provides lectures on healing trauma, Native American history, and conservation. In 2022, he was appointed to Jane Goodall's Legacy Foundation. He has also recently co-authored a book in 2002 entitled A Native Way of Giving. Without further ado, Forrest.
Thank you. I'm very sorry I'm late, folks. Been on the res too long. Anyway, we'll get going on this. This is the Utes. We're really Shoshone people, but the people in southern Colorado, northern New Mexico got the name from the Pueblo Indians. And so we continue to use it, but we're really Shoshonean people. With the exception of the Navajo or Dene people, all the other tribes of Utah are part of the Shoshone Nation. And we occupied most of the western states. We belong to the Ute-Aztecan language family, which extends throughout most of the western states all the way to the Yucatan Peninsula. The Brown are the closest relatives, and then part of the Ute-Aztecan language extends all the way to the peninsula. According to Shoshone lore, we've been here thousands of years, and 20,000 might seem kind of outlandish, but then they carbon dated some footprints in northern New Mexico, 22,000 years, so it is possible. Who knows? And we're part of the ancient Chitimac people called the Dog people. Then we adopted the name Nakoni, the homeless people, and eventually became known as the Shoshone Nation. And this is the evolution of it shows the Chitimac people breaking into three different groups. These are the Aztec are our relatives, and the Hopi are our relatives. Then we came down through here. The Shoshone Nation breaks out into the conquerors, Sedakara. They call themselves the Snake people, Snake River. The Bannock, related to the northern Paiute, the Ute people, the Comanche, and the Paiute. The Goshute are also part of the Shoshone Nation. And of course, you probably know the remains that were discovered on the border. They've been carbon dated to 10 to 11,000 years. Now think about it, we've only been keeping track of time for how many years? Since the birth of Christ? Little over 2,000 years, right? Consider that. And these are major events. Dominguez and Escalante, the Catholic priests, came into the area about the time of the Declaration. Mormon settlers, 1847, the Utah War, Walker War, Black Hawk War, Ute removal. The original homelands of the Ute Indians was all points north, south, and east of central Utah, extending to Colorado, all the way to the eastern front. But most of the concentrations were in Utah Valley and Sanpete. Utah Valley and surrounding areas was home to the Uinta-Ats, Camumba, Toponawats, and Timpanogos. Sanpete Valley and surrounding areas was home of the Sanpich, it was pronounced Slapich, Bavat, and Chibadich bands, including what was called the Elk Mountain Band. Anyway, this area here was mainly a hunting area. They probably camped in this area from time to time, but they didn't really settle Park City per se. This is just a general map. we commanded a larger area, mainly because of the horse. Now, contrary to popular belief, we were not starving or desolate. When Dominguez and Escalante came through, they saw that the Timpanogos were benefited from several species, good fish, geese, beaver, other amphibious creatures. All over, there are good and abundant pastures, and in some sections it produces flax and hemp in such an abundance it seems as though it had been planted purposefully. And it's possible because, you know, our people, horse people, we used it for rope, used it to make shoes or sandals. So there are all kinds of possibilities here. According to my friend Jared Farmer, he's a young scholar, the Bonneville cutthroat trout and other species were so plentiful, the Utah Utes would sponsor a fall, well, not a fall, that's wrong. It's really a spring harvest and invite other bands of Utes. Anthropologists estimate that fish accounted for 30% of the Timpanogos' diet. Utah Lake was considered one of the best inland freshwater fisheries in the western United States. The others were Pyramid Lake and Tahoe. Fish from the lake fed the city of Salt Lake for 10 to 12 years before it became polluted. Park City is located upon the ancestral lands of the northern Ute bands, which included the Uinta-Ats, Kumumba, which were a mixture with the Shoshone, and Timpanowats, the fish eaters from Provo or Utah Valley that would come into the area. These bands would usually enter the area in the summer months in search of wild vegetables, wild onions, garlic, asparagus, watercress, and a host of berries, currants, service berries, elderberries, etc. In the fall, the Utes would access the abundant wild game in the area. Now, this is a quote back in the 1900s from some informants. The fellow said that he's interviewed White River and Uinta reliable informants of the origins of the Uinta band. And it states the Uintas used to live on the east of the main band of White Rivers in a heavily forested area. Now, now the White Rivers are my father's band, northwestern Colorado. So it's most likely that it was on the west side of the White Rivers. Otherwise, it would be over there in a Steamboat Springs area. So I think that was wrong. The informant stated that about 1760 to 1790, their grandfathers lived in a pine forest nestled deep in a canyon. It was between a forked river where fish and big game were abundant. We think that area was the Rock Creek area, which is, that's hard to describe from here, a little less than 100 miles east. Their traditional name was Uwita Dwamp. Uwita meaning pine forest, Dwamp meaning piece of land between the forked river. Older informants stated that the camp was attacked and ravaged by a large party of Cheyenne and Arapaho, which led their surviving Uintas to flee toward the fortified Ute encampments further west. We've heard stories of this, that the Arapaho and the Comanche would often attack the Utes when they were out on the outskirts. My, my great uncle told me that one time the Arapaho attacked while our warriors were out hunting and near the Rock Creek area. And they got away with a lot of horses and they killed some people. The hunters got back just in time and pursued them and caught them near a place called Sandwash. And they were able to kill off the warriors and make them flee, and they gathered the horses and brought them back. So anytime you went outside the larger encampment of Utah Valley, you're always in danger of other tribes, especially when you went out to hunt buffalo. The Utes used mineral hot springs for medicinal purposes. as those located in Midway. Some, such as Glenwood Hot Springs, contains, I won't have to go into all of that. Also, during the winter months, the vegetation surrounding the springs provided warmth for people and food for horses. Now, Wanship's band, this is a unique, it's a Ute Shoshone band that occupied lands in the Colville area just north of here. They were under the leadership of Wanship, and in some cases they said he was a good man, tall, dark, thin. He was Ute. Others say he was Shoshone. Doesn't matter. He spoke both Ute and Shoshone, which made him very successful. He wore a buffalo robe over his shoulders. He spoke Shoshone. He's known for his friendship and compassion towards settlers, and therefore the town was named after him. He shared valuable information with the settlers. So he was, because he was both a mixture, Ute and Shoshone, he acquired the horses from the Utes, Colorado, and then the horse made its way into Utah. So he became very prominent, and he's probably the strongest representative. He's probably could go into Salt Lake Valley and no one would bother him. The Utes would leave him alone, and the Shoshones would leave him alone because they were related, and he had enough warriors who were mounted that they could defend themselves. So he's kind of a unique character. No one knows how this band was formed. My guess is it occurred as a result of intermarriage between a Ute and Shoshone. Although the Ute and Shoshones are cousins, they competed for territory and sometimes came into conflict. Salt Lake was a buffer zone between the Shoshone to the north and the Ute to the south. So Wanship was settled, that's out of place, in 1857, named after the chief. It was once a hub for coal from Colville, timber from Camas, and silver from Park City. I didn't know this. That's pretty interesting. And two railroads passed through Wanship on their way to Park City. The Union Spur was built up Silver Creek Canyon. At the same time, a narrow gauge track was built, Utah Central Railroad. So it's a pretty industrial area there. Now the horse, historians argue about who acquired the horse first, the Comanche or the Ute. Shoshone lore says it was the Utes. And I say it doesn't matter, they're both Shoshone. And Shoshone lore said that the Utes were middlemen and took the horse to the Shoshone headquarters, or the main body, which was in the Blue Mountains of Oregon. In those valleys there is where there was their main settlement of the Shoshone people. And let's see. Okay, the Eastern Utes acquired the horse first before it entered this area. And besides, the Utes here were eating fish. That was their main diet. They didn't rely on red meat so much as the Colorado Utes. Dominguez were warned about the Yamparica, hostile mounted warriors they would encounter in the Uinta Basin. That's my father's band. And they were probably the most valiant band. And this is a view of some warriors, mounted warriors. And again, they acquired the horse from their cousins, the Southern Utes. And the settlers arrive, of course. The Utes, the influx causes a lot of problems with regard to livestock, traditional gathering areas. The white livestock was displacing the wild game, caused the Utes to travel further. Utah Valley was really full of lots of wild game, deer and elk, antelope, and fish. I mean, it was a mecca. Squabbles over fish and hunting rights in the Utah Valley strained relationships. The displaced Utes began to starve. That's when they started to starve and become desperate. And then add to that European diseases. In the year 1849, this was a quote from John Nebeker, they died off about as fast as they went into the water. And this is the hot springs. This is the hot springs in North Salt Lake, which we're trying to preserve. I serve on a board, Warm Springs Alliance, with my friend Sylvia Nibley. We're trying to preserve that and develop it into a educational, cultural, and healing center. So anyway, the people, it did not cure them. 36 died and 44 dogs. Their custom was to kill their dogs when the masters died. This was the first time measles appeared, and it did not cure them. This massacre, the 1850 Fort Utah War, was devastating to the Ute Indian people. It led to the extermination of the Timpanogos band. Although the number killed listed was between 40 and 100, it's more likely that those killed number between 200 and 300, especially considering those who escaped and froze or starved from exposure to the elements. After all, it was winter. This conflict and two others resulted in the removal of the Utes from their homeland to northeastern Utah. And what caused a lot of it was the settlers wanted to fish in Utah Lake, and the Utes allowed them to, but they didn't know how to negotiate regulation of the fishery. So what happened is the settlers began using nets, and they started shipping wagon loads of fish to Salt Lake. And on top of that, the Indians complained about the loss of wildlife. So our understanding is that Brigham Young agreed to a hunting season. And old man Bishop caught 3 guys poaching. And one argument was, well, he stole a shirt. Well, the other one is that he caught settlers hunting deer on the Provo River in violation of the No Hunting Treaty. Old Bishop was killed, filled with rocks, and thrown in the river. And when the Utes discovered that, it led to a conflict. 90 Mormon militiamen surrounded the encampment of Timpanogos families. They shot between 40 and 100 men, women with guns and cannon. 2 groups fled during the night. One group fled east up Rock Canyon while the other went south, attempting to cross the lake. Both groups were pursued, captured, and the men were executed. Walker War was probably the first Ute encounter of his time. Oh, Walker was probably the first Ute entrepreneur of his time, securing his wealth from horse and slave trade. He and his warriors raided rancherias as far away as Southern California. He was a colorful character, regarded as more of a renegade than or a war chief than a civil chief to the Utes. In 53-54, he led a series of raids against Mormon settlers known as the Walker War. The best source for this topic is Walker's America. Walker's America is what it should say, by Max Mueller. And that's what the book looks like. Black Hawk War, this was far more costly in money than in lives than originally believed. Recent research conducted by Gottfredson indicates the Utah Territory spent $1.5 million on the war, equivalent to $28 million today. The settlers were pushed out of 4 counties and over 70 settlements. Over 70 Utes lost their lives and about 50 settlers. The territorial governor, Brigham Young, negotiates Spanish Fork Treaty to remove the Utes, although it was not ratified because he wasn't a representative of the federal government, so they couldn't ratify it. Then in 1861, the Uinta Valley Reservation was established by executive order of President Abraham Lincoln. Now, I've seen 2 figures. One figure says 2.2, one says 2.8, so we don't know total acreage. But it would take another 5 to 15 years to remove all the Ute to the new reservation, Uinta Valley Reservation. And it's around the turn of the century, probably around 1910 or 15. In 1880, the Uncompahgre Reservation is combined with the Uinta Reservation for 2 Ute Colorado bands, bringing the total acreage to approximately 2.5. In 1905, Congress authorizes the Homestead Act, which opened the reservation land to homesteaders, 2 national forests, and so the tribe lost most of the land. Total acreage of approximately 4.5 was reduced to 500,000 acres. So 80% of it was lost. There was a revolt. Some of my relatives went to South Dakota to form an alliance with the Sioux, to no avail, because by this time the Lakota were defeated and located on reservations as well. Then in 1984, Congress, that's a mistake, it's 1948, Congress returns 500,000 acres, known as the Southern Extension. Total acreage is presently 1.3 million acres. It's a little bit more than that now, but as you can see, from 4.5 to 1.3. So it was chiseled away over time. That's an example. This is the original boundaries in the red outline, and then the dark is what is left. This is the southern extension right there that was turned over to the tribe, I guess out of guilty conscience, I don't know. Eventually, all the Ute bands were combined into the Utah bands, I'm sorry. The Utah Ute bands were combined into the Uinta band, which I belong to because you follow your mother. My mother was Uinta, my father was White River. Currently, there are 3 bands, Uinta, White River, and Uncompahgre, of the approximately. This number has really dropped to about 2,500 now. We've lost a lot of people to COVID and just poor health. And so the numbers are declining. One reason is we have the highest blood quantum. In order to become a member, you have to be 5/8 Ute. Might as well be, you have to be full blood practically, you know. So there's probably about 5,000 Indians living out in the Uinta Basin. Well, there's some not living, I'd say maybe 4,000, and only 2,500, 2,600 are enrolled because of that blood quantum. So about 2,600 reside on the reservation, commonly referred to as the area is called Uinta Basin. Thank you.
Is it okay if we ask some questions?
Certainly.
Okay, does anyone have any questions?
You would just mention the percentage. Who established that percentage of the blood?
The tribal governing body, tribal council, but our tribe chose to call it the business committee because they wanted to promote business. So they adopted a different name from tribal council to business committee.
And that establishes the percentage of the blood you were saying that.
Yeah,
that
for
they would
membership.
The membership.
Yeah, membership criteria.
Do you have a approximate number of the Ute Indian tribe at its peak?
That speak the language?
No, the number of people in the Ute Indian tribe when it was at its peak level.
Oh, I've heard several figures. One as high as 30,000 because so many of them died of a disease and starvation. And I've heard 10,000 and then the decline from there. So it's hard, we don't really know for sure. There's one question there.
Constantly mention a band. How was a band formed?
Large that's a combination of several family clusters together in a certain location. known for living in a certain location. Like the White Rivers, they get their name from that White River in the Yampa Valley area there. The traditional name was Yamparika, which means wild carrot eaters. Now the Comanche have the same band. So there's some of us are starting to believe, see, the Utes and Comanches became bitter enemies. And we think that they may have separated from the Utes, not the Eastern Shoshone, and because they have that same name band, they have the same cultural history. Our people can understand Comanches better than they can the Northern or the Eastern and Western Shoshone. So there was more contact with the Comanches than the Shoshone. Although Washki, the main chief of the Shoshone in Wyoming, would always call on the Utes to join them in battles against the Arapaho, Crow, and Sioux. So they were close, those three groups. Utah Utes and Shoshones tended to fight over territory and squabbles, intermarriage squabbles, more than anything.
What?
Oh,
Yeah. Well, what's the current economic status on the reservation? What's
We
driver and where do most people work?
We generate most of our revenue from oil and gas. It's kind of an ironic story that around the time the trouble started, Brigham Young sent some scouts out to the Uinta Basin to scout that area because he'd heard that it was kind of dry and out of the way. And they went out and stayed pretty much along the Duchesne River. And if you're out there, that's mostly arid alkali desert, the whole area. They never went any further north or south into the grasslands or the mountain parks. So they didn't discover that it's quite diverse out there. And so when they designated, Abraham Lincoln designated the reservation, he really didn't have any idea of the breadth of the reservation and the resources that abounded there. Because right after Uinta Valley was established, they discovered gilsonite and gypsonite on the east side near Vernal, and they carved out 400,000 acres quickly so they could mine it. And then people started going into the area and seeing the beauty, the grasslands, the mountain parks, and and so that's. What was your question now? I kind of diverted on.
Oh, the economics of.
Oh, so when they designated that, thinking it was worthless, right? But underneath was oil and gas minerals, and the tribe has benefited from that. And that's how they've run their government all these years. Now, here's the thing. We're not good businessmen and women because our culture, we're socialists. We shared everything, okay? And we didn't have a strict hierarchy. When we did choose a chief, it wasn't through an election. The communities, the villages just got together and said, him, you. And it was because he or she was a good person. Soviet was probably the most influential chief. Walker was kind of a war chief renegade, and Soviet had to be careful with him because he at one time had as many as 160 armed warriors. And this is interesting. If you get that book, Wakara's America, you'll see that Brigham Young was very leery of that balance because 160 warriors, armed warriors, mounted, could give the Mormon militia quite a battle. The reason he didn't engage in that is because the Timpanogos killed his father, Old Uinta. And so Walker kind of had a grudge against the Timpanogos. even though he was related to some of them. So when the Utah War broke out, Walker headed south, or he was further south, and he didn't interfere in it. So people, when we discuss history, sometimes we forget the human elements. You know, I mean, he was pissed off. And lots of times they were fighting over intermarriages, squabbles. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you couldn't really explain why they were fighting each other. So we have a different worldview. We're socialists, capitalists. We're spiritual, scientific. We're holistic, linear, sequential. On down the line. Completely different worldview. One with nature. See nature as a resource. You see? Now you go down the line. Now here's what I'm trying to say here. One is not better than the other. I mean, capitalism has taken us a long ways, but now we're in trouble. It's taken us maybe too far because unregulated capitalism leads to selfishness, greed, and power. And that's what we're in right now. So it would have helped if they would have borrowed a little bit of our stuff to balance it out. Maybe not give power to people, such lifelong terms lifelong terms in Supreme Court, or congressmen can serve as long as they want. There need to be term limits. We can borrow some stuff from our culture. Our people said, God is in nature. God created all, including us. Don't harm God's creation. We're harming ourselves. See, we figured that out thousands of years ago. But we were the savages, right? No. We just had a different worldview.
Did bands, some number of bands ever aggregate into larger units and then larger than from there?
What did he say?
Did bands aggregate into larger units like tribes or?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And were there headmen of the bands and then chiefs of the tribes and a hierarchy like that?
Yeah, sometimes they would merge together, like that Elk Mountain band. They merged with the White Rivers. The Chibarich band merged with the White Rivers. The White Rivers used to range from Meeker Valley over there, Yampa Valley, all the way into the Uinta area, and spent a lot of time in Moab for the winters. And they could be found anywhere. They were probably the most mobile, and they were the buffalo hunters, so they weren't afraid to go out in the plains. One of the things the Utes were known for is we learned how to make a bow out of animal horns, elk, and the most powerful one was the mountain sheep. They would soak the bones until they got soft, and they would cut them into strips and mold them into a bow, and sinew, twist sinew, and they made a really powerful bow that was short, but it was very powerful. And it was good for hunting buffalo because if you've got a long bow, it's kind of hard on horseback. But if you have a short, powerful bow, much better. Now, Plains Indians, they used to always check to see if the warriors had that Rambo. And if they did, they would kind of leave them alone most of the time, because that bow was very powerful, very accurate.
What was the perception of why the Salt Lake was salty? Do you know if was there any lore or story or history, or was there knowledge of the oceans and the great oceans this far inland?
Walker would use the salt for tribute. for people to pay tribute to pass through. And so he was probably the first Indian entrepreneur. And he was cruel, very smart, adventuresome like Columbus, but he was cruel like Columbus too. If you get that book, it's very interesting. He was very smart. Him and Brigham Young, they saw each other through the same lens. They were both nation builders. Okay? And so Walker was a war chief, but entrepreneur. But the Soviet and the others would have a different relationship to the lake. They would see it as sacred. It has a wonderful purpose. It's a wonderful landmark. It's beautiful. Treat it with respect like all other lakes. And Utah Lake was revered. I mean, that was one heck of a lake, folks. That you read stories in the Mormon settler archives. They said the cutthroat were as big as salmon. And you could wade out in the river and just toss them out during spawning time. They were so plentiful. Utah Lake was an incredible lake.
Anyone else?
Hi, Forrest.
It needs to be cleaned up, by the way. It would be one of the best things this state could do is to clean up Utah Lake. And when it comes to Salt Lake, we gotta change our way of thinking. There has to be a paradigm shift there when it comes to water. We got to stop thinking of it as a commodity, a resource, and think of it as sacred. And every time you take some water, give thanks, a blessing, treat it with that kind of respect, and don't waste it.
Yep.
Find better ways to use water and grow plants. I mean, half of Salt Lake City or more should not be growing lawns. Should be xeriscape, dry kinds of vegetation. I'm on my soapbox. Who is it? But
Hi.
I do that because I care.
You know, I have been trying to formulate my question, but so I used to work for the Division of Environmental Quality, Utah Division of Environmental Quality, and we did a lot down in the Four Corners area for uranium recovery. That was the part I was with. And it's kind of a mining question, which fits this audience a bit. I've wondered if a lot of the Ute Indians worked in the uranium mining industry down there. Is that, so I've heard that, but I kind of wondering if it was accurate.
Mostly Navajo, but some of our people
So
did
they were
work there
Navajo.
also. You're talking about the white
White Mesa, yeah.
mineral, white
Blanding.
uranium plant there.
Yeah, the Blanding area.
Yeah.
So I guess the question that I've always really also kind of been curious about is if you were part of that mining industry and you were Native American and you were adversely affected by the uranium mining, would you not talk about it if you were adversely affected by it? Because I've always wondered about the mining down there and if it was done by a community that didn't want to make it obvious that they were being harmed, that they would have left, kind of passed away without really making a big deal about it. And
No, you do the opposite. You talk.
is
You
that
talk.
okay, yeah.
That is one of the biggest problems between the two cultures. And it goes back to the doctrine of discovery. There were several papal bulls or edicts that said,
Yeah.
when it comes to the discovery of new lands, the indigenous savages have no claim because they're not Christian. So the message was, these are not human beings. They're not worth talking to. They're savages. Well, that's at the heart of all of our problems when it comes to race relations. See, I've thought about this, and our people were not against progress. It's just that the way our people solve problems is we were always very deliberate. We would take our time. And it drove the military nuts. They'd say, take us to the chief. Oh, okay, hey, we want to do this. And the chief would say, I have to gather my council, talk about this, think about it. Oh, when should we come back? Maybe next week, maybe a couple weeks. Well, they'd still be deliberating on it, right? If it was important, they would take their time. So if I was a uranium guy, I was really wanting to mine that, I would go to the tribe and sit down and talk and look at all the options. See, the White Mesa Utes are saying that that plant is contaminating the groundwater. Look at the options. Maybe they could move the reservation higher to higher ground. Explore all the options. See? Talk. That's the key to everything. The only thing that stops us from talking is judgment, going all the way back to Columbus. When he came in with his ships, his soldiers had shields and swords and their armor on. They were ready to do battle. Well, the Tanos Indians, also called Arawak, they came wading into the water with breechcloths and they were naked, bearing gifts. Those were the two worlds. This world was judged as savage, having nothing to offer. This world here just came away from bloody wars in the Middle Ages. Crusaders, the Muslims, the feudal wars, War of the Roses, all bloody wars. And so they're always on the defensive, right? And they came to this world, and this world operated on different principles. And we haven't learned very much, folks. We're still killing each other, and we're killing other people. And I have a theory about this. I think it has to do with disconnect. We've disconnected the head from the heart. And the heart is where the Creator lives. The Lord gave us a spirit. And we're told that that spirit is eternal, right? Lives on. Can you think of a more powerful thing? Gift? If this spirit I have lives on forever, holy moly. This body dies, but this spirit is a gift from my Creator, my Lord. So I can appeal to this spirit for guidance. I can go out in nature and I'll experience that spirit in nature and I'll communicate with it. And I do. I have a 40-acre ranch with some American paint horses, and I was using them for healing. I still do, but very few people believe in it anymore, and so they don't come around. And it's too bad because they heal trauma. And but I keep them around. I love horses, and so I believe in healing, helping people. I serve with the former reverend over here, Charles Robinson, and he comes to our church from time to time and stands in. And so I'm a very strong believer in Jesus Christ. And so I have that connection. I won't kill anybody unless I'm not paying attention because I'm getting older now. But not intentionally, you know what I'm saying? I couldn't do it. My heart wouldn't let me do that. But if I disconnect, if I start trying to be a macho guy, a Marine, hard ass, I try to, build myself up to be something I'm not, and I'll try to go around proving it. that's when I'm going to get in trouble. I'm disconnected. My head says, go fight. My heart says, don't. Love your neighbor, like Jesus said. So when we disconnect, we go and kill each other. So anyway, that's my explanation.
Thank you, Forrest. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.